what I think would be workable here would be a requirement that the decommissioning plan be submitted. It would include a description of what the decommissioning would consist of and the applicant's estimate of the costs. That would then have to be reviewed by the town engineer, who could determine that it either is reasonable or not. And if the engineer says, well, you've estimated this cost is $10,000, I think it's gonna be more like it's $30,000, then, you know, they'll have to live with the engineer's determination as to the cost estimate, number one. Number two, once you've established the estimated cost through that review process, then they would be required to post security, and I would think we would allow in the ordinance either a letter of credit or cash in escrow. I don't really like using a bond if I can avoid it, because they're very difficult.
And I think, like,
So
again,
that's pretty simple.
right,
Submit a plan,
now
town
we're
engineer.
basing how much they gotta put on something rather than, on, back to my data. We've got some data to make a rational decision, and then they have a choice of one or the other, and it's reviewed by our engineer who, you can come, you can look at their plan and tell us whether they're in a ballpark, right?
You might want to consider doing it like you do with the roads, where I do an estimate that we had
10% contingency
10 or
or something?
15 or 25% contingency, just in case.
I think that would be part of the estimate. You're gonna have, well, I think it's gonna cost this amount of money, but,
Well,
you know, it's always,
Yeah, when you do cost estimating, always have some kind of a contingency, an estimating contingency, and depending on the stage of the project, it might be 20% or it might be 10%, or when you really get down to bidding time, maybe it's 5%. But then when we do these letter credit amounts or estimates for the roads, for example, there's typically a township kind of contingency that goes on that side. Some townships is 25%. So
We don't need in the ordinance to say that there'll be an estimate plus contingency.
I don't think so.
well, yeah, I mean, there'll be a contingency in when I do the estimate.
Right.
One way or the other, but I'm just saying, the town has added one too.
So, we're kind of evolving a plan here, which is to sort of use the Beloit approach as a framework.
And the approach we already have
Yeah,
here, really.
it's a split between both of them.
Okay.
And
That was
so-
the whole intention behind that exhibit A mention, was that the developer would bring in a plan as to how he's gonna do this. Because maybe they have a way to do it, and I know they only need that big manitowoc crane if they're gonna take the nacelle down in one piece. If they take it apart in pieces, they can use it much smaller, because a lot of cranes can reach 252 feet. So that was the intention, was they would bring something along with the permit to say, this is how we're gonna do it, and this is how much we think it's gonna cost, and it gets reviewed by the engineer, and
Well, yeah, and if they're showing you production and dismantling, you're gonna have the cost, the costs are gonna be right there in front of you.